We're going to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I want to encourage you to turn there. We're going to read this whole chapter of 1 Corinthians 13, and then you can tell people that you read at least one whole chapter of the Bible today and feel super spiritual. But we're going to read it in just a second. It might be a book or a passage that you're familiar with or that you've read before. And we're starting a new series tonight called More to Love. And what we're going to be looking at over the next 4 weeks is that the way that love is defined or portrayed by our culture as a feeling, as an idol, as a myth, as another word for sex or desire, all those things are not an accurate depiction or an accurate description of love, that we will see through the life of Jesus and through the revelation of God's Word that there's way more to love than what is defined or identified, portrayed through our culture. So we're going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I want to encourage you to read along with me, and we're going to read from verse 1 through the end of the chapter in verse 13. Here we go. It reads this, 1 Corinthians 13 says this, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It doesn't insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoings, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they'll pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. And when I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love." What is love? Of course, when I say those words, or even preparing for this message, I hear in the back of my mind, "Baby, don't hurt me, oh no," right? Like that's like almost like triggered in the back of my mind to just go off. But truly, what is love? What comes to your mind when you think of love? Or maybe it's who? Maybe it's the face of a parent or the face of a close friend. It's someone who we trust or feel safe with. I think it's safe to say that our culture is in some ways obsessed with love. It's something that is at the forefront of our discussions. It's been said that 60 to 65% of the songs that are written and produced are songs about love. People are looking for love, and people are crying out for love, but what does it truly mean to be loved or to love? See, what I want to give us tonight as we begin this series is a benchmark or a standard for what true love is. If you were going to start to work in the Secret Service, which does protect the president, but before it protects the president, the other thing or the job that the Secret Service was created to do was actually to guard our currency. It's to keep counterfeiters from coming in and counterfeiting U.S. currency. And if you were going to go work and try to prevent counterfeit money from being made, what they would do is they would sit you in a room, and for days at a time, they would have you count real money. And over again, you would feel it, and you would see how much it weighs, and you would get used to its texture, and you would get used to the smell of real money, so that when you encounter something fake, you would instantaneously know that it was not authentic. And I think what we need in our culture is an understanding of what real love is. It's important to know that love is not always perceived in the same way, and that we don't give love to all people in the same way. So we need to have something bigger than our experience to lean on. What do I mean by that? If I finish this message tonight, and I walked to the back of the room, and my wife gave me a hug, and she kissed me, and she said, "David, that was a great message. You did a great job." That would be love to me, okay? But if I also walked to the back of the room, and Mason stood up and hugged me and kissed me and said, "Baby, that was a great message tonight," that would not be loving. I would not receive that as love. So you see that the way that people encounter each other, the way that we interact, and what love is might be different for different people. So how do we know what love is? How do we define love? And we just read in this letter to the church at Corinth written by the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and this chapter is often called the love chapter, and you might have heard it read at a wedding, or you might have seen it in kind of a romantic or Valentine's Day kind of context, but Paul here was not writing to husbands and wives, but instead was writing to the whole church. This church at Corinth that was in a metropolis of Greece. It was one of the largest and richest cities in the world at that time. And this church that he's writing to had some dysfunction. They had some problems when it came to organization and unity. And in order to encourage them, Paul gives us this definition of what true love is. Simply, true love is found when we put others first and know God as the source of love. It's about where we place others and about where we find the source of love. Two things breaking this down. First, I see grouping these verses into categories. First, I see true love is, or what is love? It's number one, others first. Others for 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4, love is patient, love is kind. Love does not envy, it's not boastful, it's not arrogant, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not irritable, and it does not keep a record of wrong. Patient, kind, not envious or boastful. These are not easy things. Loving people in this way is not as easy as it might feel just reading them. But what I think is important for us to understand as followers of Jesus, we're called to do hard things. Matthew 16:24, Jesus speaking said to his disciples, he said, "If anyone wants to follow me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." You see, in order to love others as we should, we have to choose to sacrifice daily. True love requires sacrifice. It requires us to put others in front. Paul says here that love is patient. And this means that true love for others doesn't try to make other people work on our timetable. That we're willing to choose to love them even in times of waiting. Do we have patience for our parents? Do we show patience to our siblings? Do we choose to be people who are known for our patience for each other? Love is patient. What is love? Love is kind. Ephesians 4:32, and be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another, just as God also forgave you in Christ. I've told you a story before when me and my brother and sister were little kids, and we'd get in fights and stuff. This was my mom's response to like our anger. Like we'd go to our mom, be like, "Mom, you're not gonna believe what Will said about me." And my mom would quote this verse back to us, but she would sing it, which kind of made me more mad, I'm not going to lie. She would say, "And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake has forgiven you." And I would say, "But you don't know what he did!" And she would say, "So be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake has forgiven you." But the love that we show should be love that expresses kindness. Matthew 12:36, Jesus said, "I tell you, on that day of judgment, people will have to account for every careless word, every unkind word they've said." Man, you think about how often in passing, little jabs, little things to our siblings, our parents, that are just unkind. What is love? Love is kind. My dad used to say, and I had not thought about this in years, I literally thought about it this morning. He used to say all the time, he said, I've come to the point in my life where I regret every unkind word I've ever spoken. What would change if we were people truly of kindness? What is love? Love is not envious. It's not envious. That is just to say that those mindsets we get in where we say, well, if I only had the cool parents, or if I only had some of the money that their family had, if I had the doors open to me like they've had opened to them, or man, I hope they lose because they always win and they've got everything. It's not envious. True love is not one that envies or is jealous of others. What is love? Love is not boastful. I like the way it says in the Message. It says, love doesn't strut. It doesn't have its chest out. It's not one that is the hero of every story that it tells. You ever had somebody like that like has to talk themselves up in everything? Like it shows a great insecurity, but love is not one that has to brag on itself. And I think it's a fair question for us to ask, what do we brag on? What do we boast in? Is it ourselves? Is it God? And this doesn't mean that we have negative self-talk where we beat ourselves up all the time and say we're stupid and dumb and we mess everything up. But it is to say that we look for ways in everything we do to give glory back to God. What is love? Love is not arrogant. It's not prideful in itself. Man, you don't have to be around somebody who thinks that they're the greatest thing ever long to realize that they don't love you as much as they love themselves, right? It's not fun to be with that type of person or to be around that type of person who they just, they think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread and have never made a mistake and they've never messed up. That's not love, because love says you first. Love is not arrogant. Love is next. What is love? Not rude. And this seems so simple, but we live in such a rude world. Man, you go to the right TikTok comment thread and you will see just unnecessary rudeness. And I know you find weird people on the internet and you want to make fun of them for being weird. I've been there, you've been there, we all been there. But are we people who choose to be rude? There's a thin line between teasing and hurting. And man, I would challenge us to be people of true love, people who are not rude. What is love? Love is not self-seeking is your next. Love is not self-seeking. Love doesn't put itself first. It doesn't look for what others can do for us, but what we can do for others. I've talked about it before. Growing up in Mobile on the water, the best kind of friend to have is a boat friend. And I'll tell you why. Because boats are expensive. All right, and boats take a lot of gas, and boats in the bay in Mobile, you got to get them clean because they get barnacles all over them. So it's like a big process, and you have to pay to dock the boat, and you have to pay to house the boat and clean the boat, and you have to take care of the boat. So you don't want to have a boat. You want to have a friend with a boat, is what people say, because what they're saying is you want to have somebody with access to the things you want. But true love doesn't see people as access to the things we want. True love sees people as they are, created in God's image, worthy of being sons and daughters of God through Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross. It's not self-seeking. What is love? Love is not irritable. Well, David, that's just my personality. I'm just a little prickly. Well, change your personality. Don't be that way. Because love is not irritable. Man, I think we're especially bad when it comes to this with our families. We wake up in the morning and we didn't want to be awake, and our sibling is in the bathroom and we need to brush our teeth, and so we're just a little bit on edge, just a little bit mean, just a little bit unnecessarily cruel. But true love is not irritable. It's not irritable. What is love? Love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. It's forgiving. It doesn't harbor anger. It doesn't hold on to hatred. And this is not to say that if we're in a situation where a relationship with someone has become toxic or unhealthy, that we don't step away. It's not to say that if people use us or are abusive toward us, that we ignore those things, but that we choose to learn from those things and choose to forgive. That we use the past as something to learn from and not a place to live in. That we understand and we put ourselves in safety, and we put guards around ourselves, but that we don't weaponize people's mistakes. What is love? It doesn't keep a record of wrongs. So first we said love is others first. Others first. Second, we see that love is God only. 2 words, God only. 1 Corinthians 13:6, love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. These are characteristics of God working in us. These are not human things. I'll show you what I mean. But first we need to know that Christians, our goal is that as we follow Christ, we are getting closer to and looking more like Jesus every day in the way that we act, in the way that we treat others, in the way that we live. 2 Corinthians 3:18 says it this way, we all, with unveiled faces, are looking in a mirror at the glory of the Lord and being transformed into the same image from glory to glory. This is from the Lord who is the Spirit. And if we are trying to be transformed into the image of Jesus, if we're trying to look and live more like Jesus, then we should not be able to help but to love others. 1 John 4:7-8, dear friends, let us love one another because love is from God. And everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God because God is love. So here he gives us a second set of criteria. These are characteristics of love that we only find in God. What is love? Love finds no joy in unrighteousness. No joy in unrighteousness. Let me tell you this. Truth is important, and true love will never affirm sin. True love will never cheer on evil. God doesn't sin, and love is from God and of God. Wherefore, love cannot confirm wrong. This doesn't mean that we're judgmental. This doesn't mean that we're called to be rude, that we're called to be condemning. But this means if someone says, hey, do you think I should do this? And it's wrong, we should say, no, you shouldn't. We shouldn't cheer on wrong in others' lives. This means when we see someone who's bullying somebody or someone who's being mean to someone else, that we should step in and say, hey, you shouldn't say those things. And we say that out of love for you. This means, listen, for my white brothers and sisters, when you're in the room and that person looks around and goes to say that thing that you know is wrong for them to say, that you know is demeaning to people made in the image of God, we stand up and say, hey, we're not going to talk like that. Guys, that means when we're in that room and somebody goes to say something about a young lady, about a woman who's made in God's image and loved by God that's wrong and is demeaning and is disrespectful, we say, nah, love doesn't let others sin. We don't choose to allow others to walk in wrong because love, true love, finds no joy in unrighteousness. I'm not going to laugh at the joke. I'm not going to participate in the conversation. I'm not going to be a part of that. What is love? Love rejoices in truth. Truth is not always comfortable. Truth is not always fun. But God is truth. And we should always point people to truth. Rely on truth and speak truth. What is love? Love bears all things. True love has staying power. God can handle all things. So in Him, our love should be the same. It can withstand the test of time. And remember, although this is applicable to husbands and wives, Paul was not writing here to married couples. So when he's talking about love having staying power, bearing all things, he's speaking to us and the love that we have for one another. The love that we have for one another as followers of Jesus should be able to last in times of hardship. The love that we have for one another should be strong enough to take the ridicule and criticism of the world. What is love? It believes all things. I'm almost done. It believes all things. True love has faith intertwined. And this speaks to true love that is relying on God. We're saying that God is trustworthy in the lives of those that we love. We can rely on God. We can believe on God for the things in the lives of those we love. What is love? Love hopes all things. Love never gives up. It hopes all things. Those that we love, we continue to see the best in. We continue to believe for God to work in them. And maybe all you came to hear tonight was this, that you've been praying for someone that you love, and that you've been believing for someone that you love to see something in their life, or to come to Jesus. Or maybe you invited that friend to church time and time and time again. You're still believing. I want to encourage you, keep believing in love. Keep praying in love, because we serve a God who is worthy of our hope, and that our hope in is always brought to pass in time. Keep praying, because true love hopes all things. We can have hope in God for those we love. Lastly, what is love? It endures all things. Love lasts. Love never ends, he says in the first of verse 8. Why? Because true love is of God, and God is eternal. So what is love? Love is a life of others first. You before me. You get what you want before I get what I want, because I'm here to serve, not to be served. And then true love, what is love? It's found in God only. Before we can love the world, we have to understand that we're called to love each other first. We have to love those, as it says in the New Testament, in the household of faith. And it's important that we realize that we'll never be able to love the world around us when we have disagreements and backbiting and anger and unforgiveness within our midst. And I think it's important that we step into an understanding of what love is, knowing that God's call for us to love is to us first. So tonight, as we respond, maybe we consider who's someone in our lives that we've neglected to show love to. Maybe it's a sibling that we've been rude or that we've been unkind towards. Maybe it's a parent who's just been getting on our nerves a lot lately. Maybe it's someone in our friend group or the student ministry who we need to work to be better at showing love to, and then let us take the love that we have for each other and take it to the world that is so broken, so hurting, and so in need. What is love? Love is a life of others first. Love is found only in God. Let me pray for you. Jesus, thank you for tonight. Thank you for our students. Thank you for the love that you showed for us. You displayed for us. We just celebrated it this past weekend. When you walked out of the tomb, when you sacrificed yourself on the cross, we see evidence of true love. Father, would you help us to be people who reflect you, who reflect your image, who love each other well, who love our families well, who love our friends well, and who love the world. God, we love you. Thank you for the gift that you've given us of love for each other. Bless us as we go into our groups and as we finish our week. We love you so much. Thank you for everything you allow us to do. Help us to praise you in every of our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.